today we've got the honour of Joe Stenson, who is from Barratt Redrow, joining us.
Thanks for having me, Andrew. Thanks for having me over in sunny Burnley today.
You don't hear that very often, I can assure you. Do you think my interview skills are better than my jokes?
Well, having been the not the brunt of your jokes, but being at the back end of a really long one that you told to us, which was almost as long as this podcast. Actually, we felt that everything needed to change. The other was the fact that we'd identified a gap in the play provision, the play environment provision. We could actually change the record.
Right, it gives me an enormous amount of pleasure to welcome a guest here today for a bit of a different spin for my page, because normally I'd be the one answering the questions, but today we've got the honour of Joe Stenson, who is from Barratt Redrow, joining us, and we're going to be discussing a new policy that has just been issued by Barratt Redrow around play. And we've also got our newest recruit, who I'm just as pleased to have on board around the table, Emily Taylor, who's joined our commercial team and will be heading up our developer strategy going forward, won't you?
Yes,
welcome, Emily.
Very excited.
How does it feel to be with your new employer?
I'm very happy, very excited.
You can tell the truth, you don't have to lie.
I'm really excited about it.
Yeah?
It's going to be great, yeah. So
well, welcome anyway. And Joe, very warm welcome.
Thanks for having me, Andrew. Thanks for having me over in sunny Burnley today.
You don't hear that very often, I can assure you. How was the journey up?
It was okay. Let's say.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
but the lovely M6.
The lovely M6. I'm very pleased to be here, and it'll be great to chat to you guys about our new initiative.
Well, for me, this is just, like I said at the beginning, an enormous privilege to have you on our page, on our podcast. I think if there's one thing we share around this table, we've all got a very passionate view around play and the role it has in society and communities. And I want to dive into what effectively has been this policy that now Barratt Redrow have launched recently. I know you launched a version of this some time ago, but there's a new, refreshed version of the policy that you launched within the last month.
That's right.
Which was a great read. I'm very familiar to it, of course. But just tell us a bit about you, Joe, first of all, before we dive into the detail. Okay. Who are you, what's your role at Barratt, and a bit of your background.
Okay, so by background, I'm a qualified architect. I used to spend a lot of time working in practice, and in practice, architectural practice, worked with house builders for many years before moving to the dark side, let's say, and becoming
one of them.
One of us, yeah. So I work for Barratt Redrow, as we're now termed, after incorporation of Barratt Development PLC and Barratt Redrow, but historically I've worked for other house builders and in development consultancy as well. So I think to talk about the role, I'm responsible for urban design across Barratt Redrow alongside a number of other colleagues and a team, and we are responsible for upholding placemaking, landscape quality, and making sure that the whole environment that our houses are going to be plotted into and built into is the very best it can be.
Right.
And inbuilt within that is obviously the play environment, which is what we're here to talk about today. But yeah, there's been a journey that we've been on with this project, with this initiative for about 3 years now, whereby it was generated from a desire to do something different in the play environment. There was a heightened awareness of children being shut out of the play environment being on our developments, particularly with a typical standard play space. It might not necessarily be suitable for all, particularly those with disability issues, neurodivergence issues, and it was a very, I don't want to say it too much, but we did have a very formulaic response to provision for play.
Yeah.
So at that point, we decided to generate something a bit new. And obviously with Emily's help in a past life, with a previous employer and now with ESP, we've worked together quite extensively to generate this new guidance on play equipment provision and the play environment generally, Andrew, really.
Okay,
so,
great.
Yeah.
So, Emily, obviously Joe's just mentioned you've been involved, you're aware of Joe and his team and other colleagues at Barratt Redrow. First of all, what's your view on the policy, and what involvement have you had in trying to formulate an approach for the policy?
So I've been working on it for about 2 years with you, just supporting with the costings and what it could imply when we do put these sort of play areas in, making sure that it actually works for everybody, putting the designs together, ensuring that it is actually fully accessible. We're actually thinking about that play journey throughout the play area as well, ensuring that all ages are actually catered for within these play areas.
Yeah.
So I think it's a fantastic initiative. It's great to see that Barratt Redrow are actually leading the way.
It must be good for you to be involved in and approached, and obviously to be valued by way of your contribution. How long have you been in the play industry?
So I've been in the play industry for over 3 years.
Right, okay.
But I've been in the new build industry for much longer than that.
Yeah, were you at Bloor Homes and Carla?
Yes,
Homes before,
and
yeah.
Crest Nicholson.
And Chris Nicholson, right.
So
right,
we've done
good
quite a
luck.
few, yeah.
So you're very well
So-
known in the industry.
Yeah, I know the industry quite well. So I know it from a housing developer point of view,
Yeah.
a customer's point of view, because I've worked with them a lot, so the residents,
Yeah.
and also a play provider as well.
Now, I think I know the answer to this question because I'm in the play industry. And clearly I'm going to fly the flag for the idea of play being very important in any development where it's included. But it's a very basic question, but I think a very important one. Why? Why are you doing this?
Why are we doing it? Well, it's a basic but interesting question. Probably one that will stem quite a lot of discussion, actually, because there's no national guidance. There's nothing out there that says thou shalt do this, or if you are a play provider, you shall put this amount of inclusive aspects into whatever you're designing and delivering. So I think that was one of the whys. The other was the fact that we'd identified a gap in the play provision, the play environment provision, that we as a developer who were going to build an enormous number of play spaces with different suppliers and other stakeholders, that we could actually change the record because of the volume that we would actually build. So applying something like this to a key element that exists on the majority of our sites in various guises, and various sizes, seemed like a natural progression for us. And obviously the journey that we've been on with you guys and with others has resulted now in a new initiative that once we were incorporated with Redrow, it presented the absolutely ideal opportunity to combine two existing developers, all both with the right intentions, and with the existing initiatives that were in play. Let's say our inclusive play initiative from Barratt's side, and then when Redrow came on board, Emily was instrumental in helping out with their initiative that was named Playmaking. So we combined those initiatives and used obviously a launch through PR and media, let's say, to give it some real backing. And then on the nuts and bolts kind of technical side, obviously the guidance that we've produced and that existed for some time gives our operating divisions across the country, something to actually use to define how to input the inclusivity into the play spaces they design, specify and build. And obviously with suppliers such as yourselves, with their help, then it can all be realised across the country. So the why was that we felt that everything needed to change, because there wasn't we didn't cater for everybody. So that's
I think talking about the regions and the divisions, I think from my time working with developers on the subject of play, I've seen the dial has shifted by way of the perception from regions throughout the country have on the role of the play area. I think it would be fair to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, but years gone by, the play area has always been an afterthought. It's always been seen as the thing that doesn't last, and it's probably brought a lot of criticism from your customers and residents because it's seen as something that is just an afterthought, and like I said, put in right at the very end. I think, am I right in saying with this that not only are you prioritising inclusive play, which we'll get into the nuts and bolts of what that actually means in practice, but that the developments and the placemaking strategy that you're promoting throughout the country, where this is forming quite a large part of that now, is it not?
To an extent, I think in the future, and it's something that we're developing at the moment, is a whole new placemaking strategy. So in our businesses, let's say, we each had a reflective placemaking initiative. The Barratt one was called Great Places, which would set a set of criteria that divisions could follow and external parties could read about, that showed how we inbuilt specific criteria into everything we designed. Not so much of a tick box exercise, but more of a these are our commitments to place. Similarly, Redrow had the Redrow 8, which were 8 set of principles that would guide what they would do. And what I'm saying about the new placemaking initiative is that this will sit as a key part of it. The inclusive play piece will sit as a key part of it. And when you're talking about placemaking, master planning, and creating a new community in place, play is one of the most integral parts of that. It's a legacy thing that will stay there for a while. And the decisions that are made of where to put the play area, what type of play area it's going to be, how big, they're made at early stages. Those decisions are made early. So if those decisions aren't made right, then the play strategy can be fundamentally flawed. And to touch on your point about it not maybe being an afterthought, I'd say that it's possibly in some cases, but we've had a lot of success with our developments and how they've been developed, let's say, from a legacy perspective, and putting in the right things and developing them correctly because of the Great Place Initiative. And similarly with Redrow, their Redrow 8 principles, the placemaking principles, have created a remarkable uptick in place quality, and that's what we've found over the last 15 years as well, whilst we've had this Great Place Initiative in place. So building on that momentum, bolting in things like inclusive play, but also generating a new way of thinking about how to make places work better for the customer from the outset, but writing about it, creating a set of principles, thinking about the language that we're going to use to describe that. Previously, our Great Places documentation was based on a piece of government legislation, and the language that it used was quite technical, I would say. So it might not necessarily have been approachable by the layperson, but now we're going to try and create something that is applicable to everybody. The customer, the technical director, the supplier, whoever. So that is the direction of travel at the moment. We've consulted with people in government, with industry stakeholders, with some of our peers in the industry, consultants, suppliers, and we're going through that motion at the moment to create something that belongs to the business, that we've written, but obviously has external backing from a lot of parties.
Well, I know. Obviously, I've been speaking to you at length on this and been involved to a degree that you really have engaged with a lot of stakeholders. You've done roundtables, you've met professors, child development, you've spoken with people from the industry, and this has been really, really thoroughly thought through, hasn't it, as a policy. I think one obvious question to ask is inclusive and accessible play is a bit of a buzzword in the play industry. I think if you were to go from playground to company to playground company, they'll all say, we do inclusive and accessible play. And this is one for you, Emily, I reckon. What is inclusive play? If someone's listening to this now that they're not in the play industry, they're interested in Barratt Redrow, they're interested in construction, they're interested in why a PLC firm is doing something like this. But what is it? What's inclusive play in practice?
So it's not just the equipment in reality, it's the access to the equipment itself as well within the play area. When building these or designing these play areas, we need to make sure that it's usable by not only able-bodied children, but people with disabilities, ensuring that the range of equipment that we do have in there is actually giving more play value to everybody. Gone are the days of having that tick box exercise of putting that one item of inclusive equipment in. It'd be nice to see with this going forward, there will be plenty of other items available.
Yeah, I think that's important, because I think, if there's one way I would define inclusive play, it's about integration, not segregation. And I think historically, if you were to look at play areas that have been designed, items where you would have wheelchair use might even be in a different fenced off area. I mean, how horrible is that? It's not very inclusive just in its environment and its feel, is it? Never mind the actual activity that you do. And I think what's really good about and really positive about the design intention behind this policy is how everything's integrated. It's one environment where you can go from place to place quite easily, and from an accessible point of view. By definition, being able to go from A to B to C to D and experience a variety of different things through the play area. Is that fair to say?
I think so. I think Emily's point about the equipment as well, being specifically tailored, but more of it, let's say, to be accessible and inclusive. But the environment piece, and this is the part that we worked on, I suppose, most in detail, I would say, is that about providing not just a space and something to play on, but you want to stay there. You want to take you can the provision's there for you to take your family there and have a box of sandwiches and some crisps.
Spend time.
Exactly. You're not just going to pass by it and perhaps use it fleetingly. It's going to be something that the development has at its heart and is something that everyone can use. So, thinking about carers, we're providing adequate seating. It's a no-brainer to us, but providing things like adequate seating, picnic benches, things like that might not necessarily always be catered for in a standard play area design. But as well, Emily's mentioned the environment, so from the business's perspective, one of our, it's now government policy, but one of our huge Go Early initiatives was provision of a biodiversity net gain on site.
Right.
So we went early with that initiative to provide 10% or upwards of biodiversity net gain on site and from a technical perspective, that means enhancing the biodiverse environment so that there's a 10% greater number of, let's say, habitat species, etc. on the site. So with that, there was obviously a greater focus on provision of landscape areas and retention of existing trees, hedges, let's say nice bits of a site that we acquire. So the focus, was on the landscape environment and obviously, the place to live as well. And within that, when you plumb play into that, you can have, we've spoken about the concept of play on the way, as in not just having the segregated fenced off locally equipped area for play, which is fine. We love doing that, and it is generally one of our massive commitments if we acquire a site. But there's more to it. There's other parts of the site. It's about discovery. It's about children are naturally inquisitive. You find other things to do, and if they are provided for on site, and when we're talking about the customer journey, you were speaking about the way that you've presented your play equipment designs with CGIs. People appreciate a visual. If they can get a feel for things, customers can get a feel for things early days, it puts a likelihood on that they might make a more positive choice. Whereas kind of plans and diagrams might not necessarily be their day-to-day consumption for information. So I think what we've looked at is the whole environment as well. With landscape, with placemaking, and with play, all linked together. It talks back about this placemaking principles. Placemaking being perhaps an alien word to some people, but it is the creation of somewhere, a community, a place to live, a place to play, and somewhere that you want to spend the majority of the rest of your life. So absolutely. Thinking about everything in that, in a holistic sense, play is one of the massive things, because people will bring up their kids.
Absolutely, yeah. And having that on your doorstep, all of that wonderful access to everything you've just spoken about is a big, I suppose, part of the decision-making process to whether buy this house over this house, I would imagine.
That's right.
Yeah. So you're huge, Barratt Redrow, massive company, lots of people employed, lots of regions. How are you going to control this being embedded across the regions so that it's rolled out how you would want it to be rolled out?
Okay, so there have been communications sent out to the business that mean that this inclusive play manual and the content of is now mandatory for our play spaces going forward from January 2026. So it means that every plan application we make, where we're in control of the delivery of play, sometimes we're not, if we are just part of a wider site that someone else might be responsible for the wider environment. We might just have a parcel of development, but we're in control of it. Each and every play space that we design will be in accordance with this manual and the specification of the inclusive and accessible environment and equipment that we've put in there. So for each common type of play space, there is a specification of numbers of pieces of play equipment that shall be inclusive.
Like mandatory.
Mandatory, that's it. Yeah. So from a control perspective, it's one of the business's KPIs from January 2026. And I think to expand on it, that generally, from the Barratt business, because we've already been doing this for, 9 and 18 months when we launched the previous version of this documentation. For the Barratt business, it's already familiar. So for the combined business, it will now be the new target, the new KPI will be from January, and that'll be across the country.
Yeah.
So
okay.
It's rubber stamped, it's KPI'd, it's a corporate target. So yeah, that's the control.
Well, I can tell you that the immediate impact, as soon as this was launched, I know your first draft was done over a year ago, and this one's out. I've had numerous conversations with people on the ground now saying, right, we need to this, we need to that.
Yeah.
So we know I know the communication's been strong, and I know it's obviously been well rolled out.
We're not keeping it to ourselves.
No,
that's another thing.
Yeah.
It's not just for us. When we first spoke to Emily and others about it, it said, that it spoke to the fact that we wanted others to take this on board as an initiative, to think about, the inclusive environment generally, not just play as well, but an accessibility. So it's not something that we're keeping close to our chest or hidden in a filing cabinet. It's something that is out there. It's on our website. It's there to be consumed, and we'd hope that, competitors also pick up on it.
Well, that was a question I was going to ask, but I'm going to ask you, Emily. So you're aware this is out there. You're very familiar to what obviously Barratt Redrow are doing by way of prioritising play within their developments. Have you seen a response from other builders and developers? How they're reacting?
Absolutely. So Barratt Redrow are leading the way, definitely, which is great to see. But I am seeing that competitors are looking at doing sort of similar, not to this degree at the moment, but I'd hope that potentially there is more room for others to follow suit and create an inclusive play policy as well. But they are thinking about inclusivity. They are looking at the equipment that we're putting in and questioning, is that inclusive? We answer yes, and then they're happy. But if we could just dive down a little bit more across the industry, that would be fantastic to see.
Because local authorities, planners, a lot of occasions will be expecting to see this type of good work, won't they, now, in players? I think when it comes to local environments, community play areas, there's an expectation, would you say, to have elements of this or not?
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. I do think it's a massive part. Everyone should be able to play. It should be open to everybody, and that's massively important. And I think this is a fantastic thing.
I think from my experience as well, working in the play industry, I've spent so much time in the schools industry and education, and the challenges that schools face now in terms of the rise of SEN in mainstream schools is quite incredible, and they're having to put provisions in place in order to cater for that. And children need to be able to regulate, they need to be able to have time outdoors, they need to be able to do activities just so they can focus on their education. So outside of the school gates, to be able to then go from school where that's clearly prioritised through schools, to then go home and have a similar facility for whether it's parents, carers or others, to be able to provide that opportunity for young people to go outside safely in an environment that they enjoy and they're comfortable in, to do such activities. I just think there's a real good community of practice going on there. And schools don't even know that Barratt Redrow are doing this or any developer are doing similar things, but the fact that as a nation in England, in the UK should I say, that this type of good practice is going around the topic of play, I think it's something that as a country we should be reasonably proud of. And for me, to see a PLC firm flying the flag, if you like, for a topic, I mean, I've told you many times privately, I think it's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
I think the fact that a business the size of yours is publishing this wonderful document here, which clearly is a very extensive explanation as to why, I just think it's really, really good. Really good.
We're very proud of what we've done, and obviously with the new combined model, having a bit more back into it, when we've launched it with the Playmaking Initiative, it's given it a bit more credibility, and obviously that has put it more into the public eye, let's say, as well. Like we've said, we've discussed and we worked on the initial document together, but it was very much for us, it was very much for our divisions, but now we've got this real public commitment to making it work, and making it happen from now on.
What do you think the long-term impact of this is going to have on Barratt Redrow, or should we just call it the industry full stop? Is there anything that you you can cite in terms of long-term impacts, either positive, negative, or indifferent?
I think it's a huge positive, Andrew, isn't it? That we've changed the record away from, I don't want to say the norm, but something that was fairly formulaic and standard, into something that's a different standard, but a betterment. So we've bettered what we could do. You know, that play equipment and spaces, they exist on every developer site. You know, us and our competitors, or the majority of them, depending on scale. And I think focusing on something that betters that environment, like we've said, can only be, from a legacy point of view, in the future, something incredible. In fact, you know, that we're providing for this now, that, you know, in the future, people, you know, it'll change the thinking.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, absolutely.
Particularly for sites going forward. You know, and we're thinking, you know, we're a very innovative business. I think this is a real innovation for us. But I think from your business's perspective, there can be, you know, reflective innovation in, you know, new equipment types, you know, and things that could be offered to the development industry that expand on this and actually improve that in the future too.
I don't know about you, I love the challenge. I think the fact that as a playground manufacturer here in the UK, that we've got a PLC firm raising their expectations around what play should look like, albeit we've been involved, I know, but raising expectations in what they want their customer experience to feel like, look like, and what the play experience should be. I think it's brilliant, because it just keeps us on our toes and takes us out of our comfort zone. None of this just pick and place and tick a box and, you know, we've got 6 items. I think it's really good that, you know, we're continuing to be challenged in the industry. I mean, I suppose you've felt that now, going out and meeting people on the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to also point out that this isn't just a marketing campaign. It's something very, very serious, and it's a policy that you rolled out. Some could see it as a marketing campaign, and that's absolutely not the case. I think that's important.
That's a really fair challenge, actually. I hadn't thought about it like that, because the fact that we used a campaign that was digital on social media and the web, that could have been perceived, I suppose, couldn't it? But it really is something that is, like we said, we don't want to keep it unique to our business, because it's not. But it's something that we've got a hold of, put it down in policy, and it's now something that's rolled out.
What has the response been like? You know, don't just tell me all the good. You know, I'm sure there's someone out there, when you're putting things out online, who will come back and, you know, be sceptical, or they'll criticise. I
can't really comment externally, to be honest, because we haven't really had that much feedback externally.
Okay.
I think from when we first started to use this documentation, before Redrow came on board, before we were Barratt Redrow, there was a question internally of like, so what's different? What is the difference? You know, there was a perception that, you know, perhaps not much had changed, that it was more nuanced. So there was an explanatory piece of actually what it actually meant, and it speaks to the point of Emily, you know, explaining the difference between inclusivity and accessibility. You know, and I suppose taking exclusivity out of the picture, you know, to make the spaces and make the play environment much different. So that had to be explained.
So I've just been told off camera because I got Emily's surname wrong. It's actually Emily Lovell.
Correct.
Not Emily Taylor, but there is a story behind this, isn't there? Because I asked you this week, Emily, what's your name? Is it Emily Taylor or Emily Lovell?
Yeah, so I did get married 3 years ago, but unfortunately my personal email address is in my old maiden name was Emily Taylor.
Yeah.
But on my LinkedIn and everything else is Emily Lovell.
Because in my phone it's Emily Lovell.
Yeah.
On email it's Emily Taylor. So I was confused, but I apologise for that.
That's absolutely fine.
It's Emily Lovell. So you've decided to make a bit of a career change, and I approached you.
Yes.
Which seems like about 3 months ago, maybe 4 or 5 months. Okay, time goes by, because you came highly recommended to me, having been out and met developers and spoken on the ground to numerous technical directors, commercial teams, QSs, because you're very hands-on, I know. You came highly recommended to me as someone that if we want to grow our presence within the developer market, you would be somebody to speak to and try to get on board. So I did exactly that. And I remember the first call I had with you. I said, Emily, my name's Andrew Wood and I would like to employ you. Remember?
I thought, wow, okay.
So tell us why, and don't tell me it was my charming sales pitch as to why you've come to ESP. Why have you joined ESP?
In all honesty, I can see in our short first conversation a lot of the benefits already, and obviously as I've been here I've got to realise that all those benefits that we spoke about are true. The call-offs, the time it takes to make a piece of equipment is a hell of a lot shorter, which makes my clients a lot happier. The capabilities of actually doing bespoke items, quite often bespoke needs do come up within our drawings that we do get from the clients, and this is a great opportunity to actually be able to provide something that the client needs and wants. It's a breath of fresh air here.
I think one of the things, touching on that in terms of bespoke and being a manufacturer, one big competitive advantage I've had over other people in the marketplace is you tell me what you want and I can create it for you. I'm not going to a catalogue and picking something off the shelf. We can literally influence the design here, and I think that's been really well received with developers. So yeah, I get that. So you're obviously very early into the role. What are you looking forward to the most?
Getting out there again. I'd love to be back on site. That's what I enjoy. I love meeting clients. It's also dealing with this as well and putting that out there and talking to more people about the inclusive standards as well. It's for me, I really enjoy being out on site and talking to people. So I'm really excited to see that. I'm excited to see the installs go in the ground. I'm excited to be able to post photos and be proud of what we've produced. So yeah, I'm ready and ready to go.
For me, just to give you a little bit of insight in terms of interview process and due diligence and feedback, the more you'll get to know me, clearly, you know, I own ESP, I'm the CEO, I'm very proud of the product. And if it's not good enough, you won't pay. If it's not best in class, you won't pay. That's our attitude and my promise personally to any customer that ultimately we deal with. And one thing that came across in your interview was the pride you place on the delivery of the project. Because look, anyone can sell the idea of doing something. The execution, the delivery, and the proof is in the pudding, isn't it? And that came across so strong, which is why now we're getting so much more demand from developers throughout the country that I wanted to be able to replicate me. So as that might sound like a bit of a backhanded compliment,
completely impossible.
I want someone who cares as much as I do in terms of the pride of your work and the experience you provide. And that just came across so strong in our conversations when we were talking to each other at the very beginning. So everyone's testimony, I could see it. I could see it straight away.
Thank you.
And I too, can't wait for you to get cracking properly.
Yes, it is exciting, but I thought you were going to mention how much of a control freak I am then.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that.
But yeah, no, it's a really, really exciting opportunity. So I'm really glad that you've brought me on board.
Yeah, and you've also brought your fellow designer with you as well, haven't you?
Leanne's here.
So Leanne's joined.
Yeah.
Is she looking forward to it?
Yeah, she's very happy.
Yeah. Partners in crime. God help me. What have I signed up to here, Joe? Can you give me any sort of insight?
Well, we've worked with Emily for ages, and you know, I think from a positivity perspective, I think you were absolutely instrumental in helping us with this. There's no bones about that. It was your help and Leanne's help that helped us visualise what we were wanting to do, and again, I've thanked you a number of times for that, but I don't think it could have happened without your input generally. So that was fantastic. So yeah, you've made a good hire, Andrew. Well done.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Well, to be fair, it's a lot of people in the ground that certainly pointed me in that direction. So I hope you people will be here, certainly. So just jumping back to the policy, the inclusive player policy. I know you engaged, because we've explored that already here, that with many stakeholders to try and learn about what should this look like, what does good practice look like, and many definitions have been worked on in terms of coming up with this policy. But I'm fully aware as well that you carried out a research piece as well, which is really good. It gives it a lot of credibility, I would imagine. and engagement with communities. What was that, and what did that look like, and what did it bring?
So the research piece was done to put some finer points on actually, let's say, how many inclusive play areas were available, and it found that families with children were perhaps travelling 5 or 10 miles to get to a play space that could actually be appropriately used for their children with different needs. So that gave us some credibility, really, in that we knew that there was an issue. We knew that our job was to actually make more of these play spaces. But when you speak about the community aspect, I think one of the complementary things that happens if we or another would develop a site of housing, not only is that creating a new community, it's putting in place benefits such as play spaces and open spaces that if appropriately connected up can benefit local communities as well. So for instance, say a previous housing development or an edge of settlement development or something like that might not necessarily have had access to play generally, would be able to take advantage of our development and use it as, let's say, walking routes, or they could use the play area. So it's enhancement to the place that we choose to develop in, as well as creating the environment that we want our customers to live in. But it's community enhancement and engagement with community. I think from a developer's perspective happens at various phases. And to touch on the play aspect of that. If we're consulting with a community through the planning process, I mean, it's no secret that generally you might receive quite a negative response that, people don't necessarily want, new development or the disruption of a development to happen in their locale. But, if we're able to really extol the virtues of what it is that it's going to look like in the end, what community benefits it's going to bring to them, especially in terms of environmental benefits, giving people more space to use for the outdoors and obviously for their children to play, it can only be a good thing, really.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. What do you think, Emily, the future of play is going to look like in the housing sector? Is this going to reshape it? Is this going to change it? I know we've touched on already that people are trying to follow suit to a degree, but what do you think it's going to look like? Fast forward a few years down the line.
Absolutely.
What are we doing?
The outdoor space, I think, has become more and more important. Obviously, when COVID happened, everyone wanted to be outside.
Because they're told they couldn't.
Exactly. And I think that's still the case. People still want to be outside. They still want to be playing. If I was buying a new home, I would find it really important to ensure that the outdoor space is just as good as the house itself. And you can clearly see that with this policy, Barratt Redrow aren't just thinking about the house itself, they're thinking about the community that they're providing for their residents. So I do think that going forward, play and at the outdoor space will just keep on getting better and better.
I think the one thing the play area does do in a community is it can be like the meeting point to meet new families, for kids to meet new kids. So from a social point of view, it is a way of brokering new relationships, isn't it? Just naturally in a playground.
It's absolutely that. And there's a development near Cambridge that I've visited with my colleagues, and it's been in development for a long time, which is excellent to study. So it's called Northstowe, and it's a great example of placemaking in action, of how you've built a community in that heart space. So there's a primary school, and it's slap bang in the middle of the thing. And all of the active travel routes are all linked up to it. So when we were there, it was 8 o'clock. It was the day after England beat Holland.
All right,
a couple of years ago. And we were there, school kick-off time, and there's kids on scooters and on bikes, all heading towards this was effectively a NEEP. So a large play space with plenty of equipment and a multi-use games area as well.
Right.
And there was, there must have been 50, 70, 100 children all using this space before they went into school. So there was an actual social aspect to that development that had been generated by the placement of all of these things. And not only that, when we're talking about the placemaking piece and the master planning piece, the thought had gone into this. I mean, it did have a lot of focus from from a design and development perspective, up to the point in which it became an actual housing site. But it just showed how all of that careful planning, all of that time and thought actually equated to something fantastic socially for children. You know, I think, you know, just to expand on that, there's quite a lot that we think about, you know, when you think about housing development, is it always looked at through a child's eyes? Perhaps isn't, you know. So there's been a lot of what we've thought about, you know, when we've discussed with Whiz Kids. Obviously they have a youth board, their kids board, who are a group of young people who actually give them the feedback on issues, so that, you know, they've got the youngsters' view. And I think, you know, there perhaps is a missing piece where, and I know that you guys did it with Redrow, where you had Willow and Indy doing their own design, and it's what we did with the kids when we did our video as well, is that we asked them to design their ideal play space.
It was great.
But, you know, that's it. You know, children are, like I've said before, naturally inquisitive, playful. They think about things differently to an adult. And
they do that.
And it was great to see in this development. It's not the only one, but, you know, it was a real good example to be there at the time when everything was going on. You know, mums and dads and carers with kids in pushchairs, and then, you know, older kids with their younger siblings. Magic. Yeah,
it's really good. I mean, our product development team have become a collecting pot of good practice through children's voice.
Okay.
And we do it. We're fortunate we can get student voice at schools. And we go out and do loads of market research, and it's always through the eyes of the child. I think that's so important, because they're the end users. They're the end users. If the children are happy, the parents are happy, and, you know, if they're entertained and they're getting value out of it, it can only deliver good. But I think the children's voice bit is great. And that video that you did, that was launched on social media, I thought was really effective. Really captured the whole purpose behind it.
No, it was really good. It was a fantastic thing to be involved in.
Yeah.
And I suppose it really puts some context and backing on actually why we're doing this as well.
Yeah.
You know, from a visual perspective. You know.
So I asked Emily what the future of play looks like going forward in the next couple of years. But what does success look like in terms of this initiative for you? I know you've got metrics, and you have metrics that you have to report against in terms of this. But, you know, what does success look like in Joe Stenson's eyes? Take the PLC bit away from it.
Well, I think that the success would be the enhancement of the play environment across the development industry. Not just for, you know, obviously like you've said, we've got our targets. We know what we're doing. We've got our documentation, and our divisions have got this rolled out to them. They know exactly what they've got to do, and we can see what good looks like. We can see what the future looks like. But I think, you know, it's a changed environment. It's something that I think we need everyone in the development industry to come on board with. I think, you know, like from a supplier's perspective, like I mentioned about innovation, that you can, and your competitors and peers can also help with, to uplift, you know, the quality of the offer. And, you know, with design expertise and with, you know, new thought, I think this is just the beginning. You know, we can really change the record for good for the future, for everyone, for, you know, the play environment, new play environments across the country. And that also speaks to the fact that, you know, obviously you don't just work with developers, but I mean, the first time I ever saw inclusive play equipment and something different was in a local authority play environment, you know, in a large park near to where I used to work. And I thought, well, that's fantastic, you know, don't get me wrong, it was a bit clunky. It wasn't, you know, innovative or it didn't kind of look brilliant, but it was the provision there. The thought had gone into it. And it's taken that thought change, that shift change, to, you know, from the likes of us and from others, to actually get, you know, on the agenda in everyone's, you know, thought pattern. Oh yeah, this is what we must do. You know, this is how we should do things in the future. And oh, isn't that great that everyone else is thinking about it too? So I think that's what success would look like for me. You know, in 5-10 years' time, obviously our play spaces that we have delivered in the past will all be, you know, in accordance with this guidance, where practicable, and where we can deliver them ourselves. And I think, you know, it can only just get better and better.
Yeah, well, I think from a parent's point of view, you know, I've got 3 children, and we always took them out, got them playing sport. And there's one particular customer I have that works in education I consider the best, the greatest. And she always said, you get them fit, you get them active, you get them playing. they'll be fine in life, because they'll learn to socialise, they'll learn to persevere, they'll build resilience, they'll learn just to be able to communicate. And I think it's so important. And in a world where sedentary lifestyles is on the rise, in terms of kids see success through sport or playing out as through two thumbs on a computer game, where they're playing against a screen versus being outside and socialising. I think the fact that Barratt, Redrow and other developers, of course, are putting play areas in housing developments, but ones that are really high quality, I think it just tempts them out. And that whole screen isolation concept, hopefully, will disappear. And that's what success looks like for me. More kids out playing, socialising, mixing, and doing what... I sound like my parents. Doing what I used to do as a kid.
Yeah.
Going out, climbing trees, not worrying about the risks and just enjoying yourself. But if we can create an environment where it's safer and communities are nicer places to be, then I can only see good coming from this.
You're 100% right about the getting out. One of the questions that we were asked during the media rounds when we were launching this was, what challenges do you see from getting children playing? And I think it's not only the provision of play, but it's actually changing their mindset in that it's safe to do so, it's appropriate to do so. The social aspect is massive.
Oh, huge.
Because obviously you've mentioned the screen time thing or the playing online thing. The social aspect there is fine, but obviously it can take over, the social aspect of a child's play environment and, become too much, like you've said. But so we as a business can only do what we can to provide the play spaces, the environment, the outdoor play, etc., which we are obviously enhancing. But I mean, again, as a father of two young children, it gives me no more joy than to see my eldest obviously playing in a play area. Our last holiday was pretty much centred around finding the best players we could so that they could play as much as they could. And just watching them have those kind of fleeting interactions with other children who they'll probably never ever see again. But for those 15 or 20 minutes, they've had the best time of their life, where they've been running around this, these pieces of equipment or this high wire or, on the Flying Fox or whatever. And I think, that's something that if we're able to really enhance that on our developments, play space is the place where kids make friends.
100%.
Den building, those kind of things, like you say, what we used to do, not so much, danger or anything like that, but just inquisitive natural play. And the accommodation for that is massive.
I think it's huge as well. I think it's huge. Well, Joe, look, thank you so much for coming on here, and I think there's a lot of valuable content there that people will genuinely be interested in listening to, whether you're in the industry, out the industry, looking to buy a house, part of the developer industry, whatever. I think there's a lot to be learnt from what we've discussed there, because we've touched on a lot of topics. Do you think my interview skills are better than my jokes?
Well, having been not the brunt of your jokes, but being at the back end of a really long one that you told to us, which was almost as long as this podcast actually, I would say yes, Andrew. Yeah, you're a natural interviewee. You could be on TV.
Do you reckon?
Yeah.
Terry Wogan? Jeremy
not
Paxman?
quite. No, I think you've got
Michael
more.
Parkinson?
Well, you've got a slightly different accent to those people.
Michael Parkinson was Barnsley.
Yeah, but he didn't sound like it though.
No, I don't. You're right. I'm putting my posh voice on. That's why. I hope I put my posh voice on anyway. I do. Yeah. I did tell you a long joke. I remember at UK Reef we were sat together, weren't we? And I told you a joke about Paul Daniels, and it must have lasted 10 minutes, 12 minutes.
Yeah, I was hook, line, and sinker.
And there was a part you had to play, and I got you.
He got me, hook, line, and sinker. And Phil was in on it as well.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, that was it was good. But you'll be pleased to know you're not on your own. I've got many others with that as well. Emily's no idea what we're talking about, so I'm going to save that one.
Save it up for the
I'll
Christmas
save that
do.
one for the next year, so I can add her to my list. Emily, your first podcast.
Yeah.
How was it?
New, very new, great, for a good cause and a good initiative. So start high.
A lot of the staff at ESP hate me because I always put them on camera,
Right.
and ask them to talk about things, and they say, I'm nervous, but you've done it. You've new experience.
Maybe by number 10 we'll be all right.
Number 10?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that seems to be like you've enjoyed it then, if you're prepared to do 10 more. So no, hopefully that's been useful. Like I say, it's been a different experience for me because I've been the one asking the questions as opposed to answering the questions, and Jack, I suppose, bit strange for you as well, right?
A little bit. I do remember that Paul Daniels joke as well.
Have I got you?
Yeah.
Did I get you with it as well?
Oh my
I was
gosh.
really hooked. And,
Yeah.
I fell for it as well.
Yeah. Yeah,
Cracker.
well, honestly, I've got some beauties with that. It works every time.
It does.
And the purpose behind it, saying it for so long, is to get you to the point where you forget what it's about, so you ask the question at the end. Anyway, that's for another time. Well, hopefully you've enjoyed that. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, and good luck, Emily, with starting at ESP. I think you've chosen a good place to start a new career.
I'm very happy.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, everyone.